I have 20 minutes, that's not enough time, okay? So first things first, I am a neurodivergent person. I'm a neurodivergent person who was not able to succeed in traditional education as a child. And that's another story for another day. But ultimately, I was served in very restrictive educational environments most of my time as a child. And school ended up feeling like a prison sentence for me. The way I learned was not compatible with traditional models of education where people are expected to sit quietly as passive learners for extended periods of time. Most of you probably haven't seen this, but I've been like pacing in the back of the room all day. I promise I've been paying attention. That's what's allowed me to pay attention. But as Drew mentioned, so I ran from school as fast as possible. I dropped out at the age of 16. I got my GED. I went right to community college and got 15 college credits, in one semester with a 4.0 GPA, because that is what I needed to then enlist on active duty Army at the age of 17 on an airborne infantry contract. And so I was able to find success in the military where I couldn't in education. And it was crazy because my parents had to sign me off to the military. And you could think about being a parent in that position. They really didn't have a choice, right? Because at that moment I knew what I wanted, and that was the only path I had. But when I got out of the military in December 2004, after 2 combat tours, I landed at Rutgers in January 2005, 1 month later, as an undergraduate psychology student. And I've never left. Rutgers is home for me, and it is, for me, like the perfect place. And I'm biased, friends. Like, there's a lot of partners from other colleges and universities in the room, and they're awesome too, right? But again, I'm a 3-time alum at Rutgers, bachelor's, master's, PhD, all there. I'm faculty there. So I am going to say that Rutgers is the best university in the world. And at the very least, it is the most unique, and I'll give you some more information about that. But so in addition to being a neurodivergent person myself, I'm also the dad to 2 neurodivergent kids, ages 11 and 9, both twice exceptional. So it's, again, a talk for another day, but that means that they are gifted in some areas, in many areas, but also have really substantial deficits in others, right? So they have kind of asynchronous development. They live in both tails of the distribution, both gifted and have both have disabilities. So off we go. So I always know, like, when I go to a really good conference that I'm planning to speak at, when the talks that I sit through throughout the day end up changing what I plan to say later in the day. And that is like absolutely what has happened today. There's so many incredible presenters that have already treaded kind of some of the basic ground. But I'm still gonna talk this because I think it's like something that hopefully you guys can repurpose, because I find that is really accessible to the majority of people to understand, like, the experience of most neurodivergent people in traditional educational environments. And this is really famous. You've probably seen it before, sometimes incorrectly credited to Einstein, right? But this is a caricature of our education system. Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it would live its whole life believing that it's stupid, right? And so here, of course, the teacher has identified like what the measure of excellent performance is for the entire class, right? And of course, this is something that the teacher can do. And so everyone in the class has like different capacity to do, like at the starting point, to do well at this. And clearly, the fish has no chance, right? And so again, sitting in traditional education classes where they're asking me to sit still quietly for hours at a time, I had no chance. Like I would never be able to climb that tree, maybe heavily medicated, right? Maybe if I was heavily medicated, I'd be able to climb that tree. But again, I'd be able to do little else if that were the case. But so again, there's nothing wrong with the fish, right? And this is, kind of, a metaphor for our tendency to take a deficit focus in our educational systems and also in our employment systems, right, at the company, right? The company or the university or the school kind of sets what excellence looks like based on a single like pathway to success or archetype or the perfect student or the perfect employee, and that ends up leaving out a lot of individuals that are the fish, who, like, if the test was like a swimming test or a swim race, like the fish would crush it, right? If only we figured out like what that fish is extremely good at and then leverage that ability, right? So that they could add tremendous value for the benefit of the whole organization, right? That's someone we would want on the team, right? So as you're thinking through this, right, I want you to think about, like, how can we move away from scenarios where we're excluding very talented people just because we're setting the stage in a way that they would never be able to succeed under any condition. It's not their fault. Right? And so one of the classic examples of a tree that the majority of neurodivergent people cannot climb, right, is the traditional job interview format, right? And especially when we're talking about individuals with autism or autistic talent, right? Like inherently in the definition of autism are significant deficits in communication and social ability, right? That's what a job interview is. Right? And again, this is just one kind of symbolic example of a tree that shows up time and time again in employment situations, right? But it's a good one. And I think we're breaking down some barriers, right? Because you just heard from many today that there are a lot of companies that are like changing and adapting their job interview process. And that's spectacular because again, like there's historic research that suggests that job interviews are actually a really horrible way of selecting talent, that someone's performance in a job interview actually is a pretty poor predictor of their future performance on the job. But we keep doing it this way because it's efficient and everyone's familiar with it. It's just the way we do things, right? Oh, there we go. So I'm going to skip to here. So are all of you familiar with the curb cut effect? Who isn't familiar with the curb cut effect? Awesome. All right, so everyone knows what curb cuts are. This is tremendous, right? The Americans with Disabilities Act is a piece of legislation that ensures that the community should be accessible to all people with disabilities. And probably like one of the greatest realizations of the implementation of this legislation is we now have curb cuts for people who primarily use a wheelchair to get around. Like prior to this, like they just couldn't move around their community or they'd have to do it in the road at their own peril. Right? And so everyone's familiar with curb cuts now, everyone knows what they're for, and like in general, like everyone gets it because it's simple, it's tangible. It's like, oh, this person uses a wheelchair, of course we need to do this for them, right? But one of the inadvertent benefits of streamlining a process for someone with a disability, like someone who uses a wheelchair to get around, is there's inherent benefit to everyone. Right? So now curb cuts benefit, the parent pushing the stroller or, the person, the worker using a wheelbarrow or, the person with luggage, right? So again, job interviews, same thing, right? All of these barriers that we're identifying for neurodivergent people in the workplace, like we've talked about a lot of them today, like by addressing them, we're not just addressing them to unlock access for neurodivergent people, we're addressing them to optimize our organizations for all of the employees who work there, right? So when we're talking about like the benefit of doing this to companies, it shouldn't just be for neurodivergent people, right? The curb cut effect is a documented phenomenon that happens like no matter what the barrier is. If you remove a barrier to performance for one subset of people, it benefits the rest of the group. Right? And so when we're talking about quality of life, and I'll talk about my center a little bit more in a little bit, again, not enough time, but so we focus on global quality of life issues pertaining to neurodivergent adults and adults with autism in particular, because autistic adults living in the US arguably have the poorest quality of life compared to any other group of people living in society today. And that is bore out in terms of employment rates, like we talked about those stats earlier, access to good mental health services, physical health, lifespan, secondary education completion, right? And so employment is just one piece of quality of life, but it's pivotal. Right? So it's pivotal and it's kind of embedded in our human society. Like from a very young age, all of you were asked by someone you looked up to, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Right? That question and that kind of portion of your identity was kind of embedded in your psyche very early on. Right? To be a successful, functioning adult in society, I need to work. I need to have a successful career, right? And there's really good tangible outcomes to that, right? So when you earn money, you can be more independent. When you're successful, you feel better about yourself. Many people report like building their strongest relationships, maybe even their lifelong partner and significant other at work, right? So there's a whole abundance of research that suggests that employment is a really key part of this quality of life equation. And many states have passed legislation to bolster that, right? So New Jersey is an employment-first state, meaning that any agency that supports individuals with developmental disabilities has to have employment as a priority, right? And so, again, this is some of the ground we've treaded. For the individual employee, there are tremendous benefits beyond a paycheck, right? And so as potential employers, as organizations, you should feel strongly in terms of a moral and ethical obligation to do that for this reason. And then again, from an organizational success perspective, like that neurodivergent talent brings tremendous value in a bunch of different ways that other kind of pools of talent won't bring, right? And again, all day we've been talking about this, and so it's just so incredible to hear the direct stories of like SAP and Microsoft and all the tremendous successes that those like really prominent companies have realized in terms of real contribution to the strategic success of the company. Well, so that should be spaced out differently, right? And so I told Jose earlier today that I really want to steal his graphic where he showed kind of like a more coherent model of a talent recruitment pipeline flowing from school-age school systems through the university into companies, because that's exactly what I am also up here appealing to all of you that we work together to create, right? And so right now, even with this level of awareness, we're still kind of taking, a reactive approach to this, right? We're still kind of saying like, oh no, these individuals are having poor quality of life. The employment statistics are horrific for autistic adults. These companies don't have good representation. Let's jump in and do something, right? That's a reactive approach, right? Versus a very thoughtful, proactive approach where we invest in that talent recruitment pipeline that Jose described, earlier today. Right? And so now to speak about Rutgers. So Rutgers is a colonial college, right? So there are 9 colonial colleges in the United States. Rutgers and William & Mary are the only 2 that aren't Ivy Leagues. Rutgers was founded in 1766, so it's over 250-odd years that Rutgers has been here. We have nearly 70,000 undergraduate students right here in Rutgers, New Brunswick, right? And Rutgers, New Brunswick is like sprawling. It's across 5 sub-campuses that spans 13 municipalities. Rutgers University is the 3rd largest employer in New Jersey, right? So you heard that the state is the 1st. Rutgers University is the 3rd. We have about 22,000 employees in every type of work you can imagine at every different level. Again, so it is a city, it is a community. Rutgers has a long history of supporting people with autism. The first school for children with autism in the U.S., a university-based school, was founded at Rutgers in 1972. It's the Douglas Developmental Disability Center. So this is the place, right? And so again, we, as the State University of New Jersey, right, we feel an incredible obligation to take this on, right? Like universities, especially like public state land-grant universities, have a commitment, right, to contribute to the betterment of society. And so just to talk a little bit about the Rutgers Center for Adult Autism Services. These pictures of our beautiful community center. We opened this in January 2021. So under this community center, we have 4 different programs. So as Drew mentioned, we support people with autism across the spectrum. So we do have a college support program that supports neurodivergent Rutgers college students. We have 50 individuals in that program right now. We also have a comprehensive lifespan program for adults with autism that have approximately 40 adults in it, range in age from 22 to 53, and include people who are minimally vocal, who have really significant round-the-clock 24/7 support needs, and also Rutgers University alumni who have driver's licenses and live independently and are employed full-time at Rutgers University. So just to dive in a little bit to our college support program and talk about college support programs more generally in the United States. So there are hundreds of programs that have emerged at different colleges and universities throughout the nation. A great resource for seeing like the real kind of breadth of program is the College Autism Network. So if you're not familiar with that organization and that website, that's a great place to get a sense for how many programs there are out there. But just to say, like, these programs are still operating largely independently, right? Kind of like in a siloed fashion. Like, we have many programs right here at New Jersey in different colleges and universities, and we really don't have a great mechanism to talk to one another, to collaborate, to ensure that we're doing things consistently, right? It very much continues to be like a quasi-competitive market, right? Because there's no funding for this type of service. Right? That's really like important to put out there, that while children with disabilities and like children with autism and other forms of neurodivergence get access to a free and appropriate public education through the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, all the way up to 18 or 21 years old, right? There is no dedicated funding that's automatically available for neurodivergent individuals who want to attend college, right? So all of these programs are kind of in a position to compete for students because the students pay for these services out of pocket, and it's that program revenue that allows these programs continue to exist, right? So at our program, kind of the foundation of what we do is grounded in an approach called ACCESS, which stands for Accessing Campus Connections and Empowering Student Success. This was an evidence-based approach that was developed by my colleague, Dr. Josh Langberg at VCU, and it is the only approach that has been validated by a randomized trial research that shows that it's effective for college students with ADHD. Right? And so we have adapted it for college students with autism, and now we're implementing it in a way where all of our students get access to this. And so this is just a quick snapshot of what we provide in our college support program. And again, I'd have to go through each one in detail to help you understand what it looks like day to day. But in general, all of our students get weekly mentoring and coaching sessions with a highly trained mentor. Right? They get skills and strategies group to teach them about their diagnosis, their disorder, things that they're likely to struggle with, and give them skills to overcome those disadvantages, right? As you can see, there are 2 tiers of access, right? So that's where tier 1 ends, and that's our kind of less intensive tier. Tier 2 continues on with regular mental health monitoring, individual academic support in the form of tutoring, and this is a big one, an on-call campus liaison. So if any of our students in Tier 2 have an issue that comes up in their dorm with an individual professor, with student conduct, res life, recreation, anything else, like, they can contact us and we will respond immediately during business hours, during the work week, right? And help them troubleshoot that problem and even serve as a representative for them and an advocate with them in interfacing with other university departments, right? Peer mentorship is a huge part of our Tier 2 program. That's where other undergraduate students help our students get connected socially on campus. Right? And so just some great pictures of some of the social events. So RUPD, the Rutgers Police Department, are our partners in this. They come in regularly and interact with our students under like proactive, happy, fun circumstances. So our students see them as a resource, as an ally, and they are very much kind of with us every step of the way, no matter what comes up on campus. We have great cooking events. You know, a big part of our program is employment, and right now we have a great group of mostly on-campus employers. We are a national employment network now, provided by federal Social Security, and we're now looking, we have proof of concept, we've shown that our model works, and we're looking to expand it external to the university. So that's where we're hoping that some of you in the audience are interested in partnership in that respect. And so I'm out of time. But thank you very much for your attention, and thank you all for caring about this and coming today, and thank you for Drew for organizing this. Just echoing everything else that everyone else has said, this is miraculous that he was able to get us all in the room today, so thank you.